So today I'm going to talk about stress, the impacts on the body. So let me start by asking, what is stress? Just shout it out. You don't have to raise your hand. What is stress?
Cortisol response.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
Can't shut your mind off.
Okay, good. Anyone else? All right, cool. So when there's two different modalities, right? There's fight or flight when we're stressed out, and then there's rest and digest when our body is relaxed. So this is the autonomic nervous system, is that fight or flight. So that's that kind of like adrenaline response. And then there's the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, when your body's relaxed, when you can repair. So I like to think of the sympathetic or fight or flight as like perceiving danger or stress. And then the parasympathetic is recovery and repair. So really this system should work like a seesaw. You should be able to bounce back and forth between being stressed and being relaxed super easily. This is resilience. This is called resiliency. It's your ability to be able to adapt to stressful situations and not stay stuck in fight or flight. So unfortunately, modern life keeps us stuck in fight or flight. So there's a hormonal cascade that happens. So stress triggers the release of cortisol from the adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are these two little glands that sit on top of your kidneys, almost like little hats, and they're responsible for producing your stress hormones. So what's interesting is they're also responsible for producing some of your sex hormones. So there's a hormonal precursor, it's called DHEA. And this hormone has two different pathways. It either produces cortisol or it produces progesterone and testosterone. So if you're somebody that's in a constant state of fight or flight, what's going to happen is your body is going to need to take care of the danger first. So it's going to keep upregulating cortisol production, and that can really affect your sexual health or your hormonal health. So it's going to decrease the amount of testosterone or progesterone that you're creating in your body. So like a big part of diseases is estrogen dominance, which a lot of the times happens because of chronic stress, because the men aren't producing enough testosterone and the women aren't producing enough progesterone. So what does adrenaline do? Shout it out. Anybody know?
Amps you up.
Amps you up. How? Physiologically, what does it do?
Gets excited.
Yeah, so by increasing your heart rate and increasing your blood pressure. It also increases your blood sugar, which I've literally heard people say, oh good, like I'm burning more sugar when I'm stressed out. But no, you're not. Because the problem is we're not fighting, we're not running away, we're actually freezing in place. And then all this sugar that we released, all this energy has nowhere to go. So over time, that's gonna create insulin resistance and a higher blood sugar within the body. So this response is meant for short-term survival. It's not meant to be turned on all the time. And so who here has a dog, actually? Who here has a dog? Okay. Have you ever seen your dog shake when they're not wet?
Mm-hmm.
Do anyone know why they do this? It's to shake off stress. So they build a lot of stress in their body. You know, I notice it with our dogs. If one of them starts chasing the other, when the whole shebang is over, they'll shake. And that's their way of kind of moving that stressful energy that they just created in their body out of their system. So a lot of animals do this. We as humans don't. Go like this. We don't breathe. Our muscles tense, and then that tends to build up in our body over time. So modern stress versus ancestral stress. In the modern day, there are all different kinds of stressors that we deal with, and most of them are psychological. So we have financial stress. We have sitting in traffic, we have deadlines, we have notifications constantly. It's just so much stimulation all the time. But if we think about, 200 years ago and the existence of humanity beyond that, the biggest things we really faced were predators. So it's not very often that we were in this kind of fight or flight state. We would, have an encounter with a wild animal or another tribe. That response would be turned on. We would expend that energy through a fight or through a hunt or whatever it is, or running away, and then we would go back to our peaceful lives. So there was a nice balance. Nowadays, it's like the second you open your eyes, you're on your phone, you're getting notifications, you're in traffic, all the things, and that stress response never actually turns off. So another problem is that we can't actually distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological threat. The same stress response happens in the body. You're producing the same amount of adrenaline, the same amount of cortisol, your blood sugar's spiking, but you're not expending the energy. So huge problem. And this is called your allostatic load. The consistent wear or tear that your body is receiving. So it's kind of like repeatedly revving a car engine and not letting it cool down is essentially what modern living is like, unless you have the right tools to put in place to take care of that. So it impacts multiple systems: the immune system, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system. It relates to faster aging, which none of us want, and increased disease risk. So let's talk about the cardiovascular system, right? Your blood pressure is constantly elevated. What happens is from the high glucose, some inflammatory markers become activated. So that's contributing to blood vessel damage. Then we also have the blood becoming more viscous, more thick, which can down the line lead to more clotting, so heart disease, stroke, things like that. Number 2 is digestion. So if you think about it, when you're stressed out, if you're trying to get away from a predator, what don't you need? You don't need to digest any food. So what's happening is the blood is flowing to your heart, to your lungs, to your brain, to your muscles, and it's moving away from the digestive system, it's moving away from the reproductive system, as we already talked about, because you don't need to have a baby to get away from a threat, and it's moving away from the detoxification system of the body, because you also don't need to detoxify anything to get away from a threat. So those 3 main systems, digestion, detoxification, and hormonal, are being shut down, basically, while your body's dealing with the stressor. So over time, that becomes a problem. You're not producing enough digestive enzymes, so your food's just kind of like sitting in your stomach. I don't know if anyone here has eaten something while like driving in traffic or doing something stressful. You just like kind of feel that food just like sitting there, and it's really uncomfortable. It's because you're not producing any digestive enzymes to actually break that down. So the blood is, again, directed away from the GI tract. So what does this do? So this results in undigested food getting to the gut. Who here has heard of leaky gut? Raise your hand. Okay, cool. So I'm going to teach some of you something today. So leaky gut, like your gut, is this very long passageway, and it has a singular cell wall, like a barrier. And this is there to ensure that the proper nutrients are getting in, but also to keep out what's not supposed to be getting into the bloodstream. So what happens is when you don't break down your food fully because you're not producing enough enzymes, these larger chunks of food are getting into your intestines where they're not supposed to. They want to be sucked up into the bloodstream. The body wants nutrients, right? So what they do is they start to create holes in this intestinal lining. And large chunks of undigested food get into the blood. And the immune system is like, WTF, I don't know what that is. I only know what these individual food components are, so let's attack it. So the immune system will then secrete inflammatory chemicals, trying to attack this invader, which it thinks is a bacteria, fungus, or virus, but really it's your food. So 2 problems here. You're not actually getting any nutrients, and then every time you eat, you're activating an inflammatory response in your body. So your organs are constantly bathed in these inflammatory chemicals. And this is ultimately what will lead to autoimmunity and other things like that down the line. So this is why they say stress is the silent killer. It is no joke. Let's see here. So immune system suppression. The natural killer cells, which are like a specific cell to kill your cancer cells, will decrease by 50% in stressful situations. Cytokines increase, which again are those inflammatory markers that the white blood cells shoot out at the invaders. Your healing time doubles. That is crazy. And then you have a decreased production of white blood cells. So this makes you more susceptible to different viruses and illnesses. So like, for example, with COVID, a lot of the people that were dying were people that had pre-existing conditions. And maybe this pre-existing condition was unknown because stress is the silent killer. But some young people died that were highly stressed, and that's because their immune system was only at half function. So it's really, really important to address this kind of thing. Next is the brain. So there's a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. Shout out if you know what this part of the brain does. Good.
Executive function.
Yes, perfect. So decision making, memory, problem solving, things like that. So when we're stressed out, that part of the brain actually slows down and can, if like you put your brain on a scanny thing or whatever, you'll actually see that it shrinks over time with chronic stress. Then there's another part of the brain called the amygdala. Shout out if you know what the amygdala does.
Is that the lizard brain? Is that Is that? Am I getting
I've never heard it be called the lizard brain, but it's basically your balance and mobility,
Oh,
your
okay.
breath, and your emotions.
Okay.
All three of those things. So this part of the brain actually becomes larger under chronic stress. So your sensitivity to your emotions is going to become that much stronger. You'll likely be more reactive. So I'm sure a lot of you have been in a stressful situation before, and you're angry, you're mad, you're sad, and someone approaches you and you're very reactive, even if you don't mean to be. That's because you're not building resiliency in your stress response. Your amygdala is constantly being stimulated by this stress. So it's gonna mess up the flow of your neurotransmitters as well, your serotonin, your dopamine, all those kinds of things. And it's a domino effect. When one system is affected, so are all the others. And so there's actually a study from Yale that shows that chronic stress shrinks that prefrontal cortex, the decision-making part of the brain, by 20%. That's a lot. That's a pretty significant number. So it's really important to be aware of the way that stress is affecting your body, because I feel like a lot of us just, yeah, stress, brush it off, like I'm stressed, yeah, or we make jokes about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm like the most stressed person ever. Like, it's just not really properly addressed or spoken about. So now let's talk about the recovery cycle, right? There's a natural oscillation that happens between stress and recovery. So the body flipping between these two. And if you think about athletic trainers, right? What is their formula for getting stronger? It's stress and then recovery. Stress and then recovery makes a really strong athlete. And the same thing makes a really strong human physiologically. So optimal performance does need both stress and recovery periods. So a lot of us have got the stress part down pretty good, but we're not very good at recovering. So this is also going to affect, the amount of stress we experience during the day is going to affect our sleep quality. So sleep is our primary form of recovery. Cortisol is naturally the lowest around 9-ish p.m. We do get like a second dose of cortisol between 10 and 11 p.m. if we're not already sleeping. How many of you, raise your hand if you experience that second wind at night? It's like, yeah, it's getting late and all of a sudden you're like, you were really tired around 8 o'clock, you were like dragging ass, and then 9 o'clock comes and you're like, I'm gonna write this presentation right now. I'm gonna clean the windows, you get this second burst, and that's basically because your cortisol is spiking again. And so a good way to work with stress and work with this is to try to get to sleep by or before 10 p.m. so that you're already sleeping when that cortisol is rising again, so you don't realize it. It's a little hack for you. So poor sleep increases your daytime cortisol by 37%. That's a pretty significant amount. So sleep, like in my practice, sleep, blood sugar regulation, and yes, pooping are the three most important things we need to have under control before the person can move forward in a healthcare protocol. So also when you're sleeping, your cells are repairing and your memory is consolidating. Everything you learned from that day is consolidating. So if you're, having a hard time remembering the details of things that happened that day, or if you're in a learning phase of your life where you're trying to learn a new skill or something like that, it's really important to get a good amount of sleep. Also, if you're not getting a lot of sleep, your hunger cues are off. Your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, shoots up, and your leptin, which is your fullness hormone, decreases. So anyone have any idea why that might happen?
Your rest and digest period is thrown off.
Exactly. The body needs to compensate for the lack of energy that it didn't get from that lack of sleep. So what's the solution? Eat more nutrients, eat more food. So you may or may not notice, or I want you guys to pay attention, the next time you don't get a good night's sleep or you don't get enough sleep, notice how you feel the next day. Are you insatiable? Do you want to eat a whole box of cookies? Do you drive by McDonald's and smell it and do a U-turn and you're like, I need that? Just pay attention to those things. So then there's also the natural rhythms of the body. We operate in 90 to 120 minute rhythms. So our peak performance is done in 90-minute windows. And then a 20-minute window of rest and recovery is really essential. So I recently started using this as I do my work. I set the timer for 90 minutes and I focus for that 90 minutes, and then I go give myself 20 minutes of rest and relaxation. I go outside, I throw the ball for the dog, whatever it may be, that's gonna reset me. But if you're just trying to go for 8 hours straight, you're gonna burn out because your chronic stress response is gonna be through the roof. So Who wants to tell me what some of their recovery activities are, if they have any at all? You can just shout it out.
Sauna.
That's a great one.
Physical, workout.
Workout, cool.
Meditation.
Meditation, great.
Cooking?
Cooking, I love that one. So yeah, some really good ways to deal with this are just setting a timer for 5 minutes and doing some deep breathing. 5 minutes of extended exhales are gonna switch your body into that parasympathetic rest and digest state, regardless of what is going on in your situation. It's like a physiological hack to switch between those nervous systems. Movement is gonna break up any muscle tension that you may have had for the day, right? So let's say all day long you're sitting at a computer, people are being annoying on your calls, you wanna scream at someone through your email, and your body's like this all day long, right? So just getting up, making 15 minutes during your lunch break to take a nice walk, release that muscle tension or stress, is gonna really help so much. Then there's nature exposure. Getting into nature for just 15 minutes a day can have profound effects on your nervous system and also your immune system. It will actually boost the production of those natural killer cells, those anti-cancer cells, which is really amazing that just being outside for 15 minutes can do that for your body. Luckily for me, I have dogs, so I'm forced to go outside every day. But I do notice, especially in these winter months when I'm not outside, my body just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel as relaxed. I feel more tense. Maybe I'm a little bit more snappy. Sorry, Scott. And then there's social connection. So that's going to trigger the release of oxytocin. So oxytocin, who knows what that hormone is or does? It's the love hormone. So it's not just in a romantic relationship that hormone comes out. It can be anything that you're doing for yourself. So like Sarah said, it could be cooking a nice, nourishing meal for yourself will release oxytocin. Bonding with a loved one, calling a friend, sitting outside for a moment, meditation, breath work, mindful movement, all of these things will produce oxytocin. Even reading your favorite fiction book, right? And oxytocin is like the ultimate leader of all the hormones. So she is the only hormone that takes precedent over cortisol. So if you can stimulate some oxytocin doses during the day, petting your cat, petting your dog, giving yourself a hug, whatever it looks like for you, you're gonna automatically decrease that cortisol response in the body. So what about eating when stressed out? This is a big one. This is like the first thing I address with my clients or group workshops or anything is not just what you're eating matters, but how you're eating and when you're eating. So I never want to see anybody like sitting on the computer, shoving food in their mouth. Like that is not what we want to do because you're stuck in that stress response. And again, you're not going to be producing the enzymes and that food is just going to sit there kind of fermenting in the stomach and not properly digesting. So what I like to do is I take 3 nice big breaths before I have a meal. Usually I say some kind of prayer, sometimes out loud, sometimes just silently. Like I'm very grateful for this food because that's a high vibration feeling is gratitude. And so if you can bring that in before your meal, and then no distractions while I eat. I give myself a full 20 minutes to eat. And if you're someone that's going to say I'm too busy to do that, then you need to reevaluate your priorities because that's wild to me. So also setting up boundaries and recovery periods. So like I talked about before, 90 minutes of focus work, 20 minutes of a recovery period, and flowing through that cycle throughout the day, you're going to find that you're more productive, you're more creative, you're more, problem solving, you're more mentally stimulated, you're going to feel better about yourself. Then there's also digital boundaries. So are you allowing all these work emails to come through past 8 p.m.? Are you glued to your phone on your work emails all the time? Are you giving yourself space from that to actually decompress? And then there's physical. Do you have a dedicated space for work versus dedicated space for rest? Like the bedroom should be a sacred place, no computers, no TVs really, and just like meant for sleeping and resting and relaxing. Because if you're working in your bed or watching TV in your bed, when you're in your bed, your body is thinking that you're gonna watch TV or you're gonna work. And it's not thinking that you're gonna sleep. So that might be affecting your ability to fall asleep as well. Bringing in a meditation practice, even just 3 minutes, twice a day, maybe once when you wake up and once at lunch, can be so profound and beneficial. You can just do something called like a body scan where basically you'll close your eyes and you'll scan your body from head to toe, just looking for any points that feel tight, tense, or uncomfortable. So actually, let's just go ahead and do that now so you know how to do it. So I invite everybody to just close your eyes for a moment. And the first thing I want you to do is just notice the weight of your physical body on the surface beneath you. So noticing the points of contact between your legs and the chair, your feet and the floor. And so we're gonna start a mental scan from the head, from the top of the head. So you're scanning the forehead and you're scanning to the space between your eyebrows, noticing if there's any tension there. If there is, just relax the facial muscles. And then scanning down the cheekbones to the jaw and allowing the jaw to be loose, letting go of any tension or clenching that you're holding on to. Scanning down the neck and the throat, and then to the shoulders and dropping them down away from the ears. Feeling the release of that movement, feeling the release of that stress. And allowing your hands and your arms to relax if they're on the armchairs, if they're in your lap, just allowing them to just kind of dangle and be supported by whatever they're leaning on. And then scanning down the belly and the low back, and so just letting go of any resistance or sucking in or tightening that you may be doing there. Just letting that go and just feeling your breath move fully and completely through that space. And then scanning down your legs and your hips, so just being aware, are you clenching any muscles in your legs? Could you relax those muscles a little bit more? Are you holding on to any stress there? And then scanning down to your ankles and your feet and just noticing how your feet rest and are supported by the floor. And then we'll just take 3 deep breaths together while we're here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna breathe in through the nose for 4 seconds, hold at the top for 4, and then exhale out of the mouth for 8. So we'll go ahead and we'll take our first breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, and out through your mouth for as long as you can, making it slow and relaxed. And then we'll go ahead and we'll take the next breath in through our nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, and exhale. And we'll go ahead and take the next breath in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, and exhale, slowly let it go. And when you make it to the bottom of the exhale, you can just slowly and gently open your eyes. So that's it. You just need to do that twice a day, right? There's really no reason that you can't fit that in twice a day. It's really quite simple. So that's an actionable solution. Also, the nutrition portion, eating to keep your blood sugar balanced. So if you're having coffee on an empty stomach, black coffee or coffee with sugar in it, you're immediately spiking your blood sugar before your cortisol is normally going to raise. So a good hack for this is you can put unflavored collagen in your coffee. It has no taste, it dissolves easily. It's got about 18 grams of protein. Just mix it right in, that'll help your blood sugar stay balanced. You can put some kind of fat in your coffee. So personally for me, I'm like a butter freak and I love putting butter in my coffee, but you could do butter, ghee, MCT oil, coconut oil, just a teaspoon will be enough to stabilize your blood sugar. So fat is gonna be the primary macro that keeps your blood sugar stable, then protein, and then sugar is gonna spike it, obviously. You can bring in some intermittent fasting to combat insulin resistance in the long run, because basically what you'll be doing after 8 to 12 hours with no food is you're switching over into ketosis. So you're burning fat for energy instead of sugar, and that way you're kind of cleaning up the glucose response system and you're making yourself more sensitive to glucose instead of resistant. And then also meal timing. So the largest meal of your day should be when the sun is highest in the sky, because that's when the digestive fires are highest. Once it starts to get dark out, your body starts to slow down and prepare for sleep. So you want to eat a lighter dinner, and you want to make sure you have at least 3 to 4 hours between dinner and bed. You know, some light snacking is good at night, like some nuts, maybe some Greek yogurt, you know, even some smoked salmon, something that's high in protein and fat, but you don't want to really eat anything too carbohydrate heavy at night. And I just want to end it with, you know, small consistent actions create significant physiological changes. So you start with one practice, you master it, and then you add on. And you do what you can. We're not all perfect. You know, you miss a day here and there, whatever. But what's important is that you don't let that get you down, and you get back up on track, and you realize that each day is a new day. So it's not about perfection, but it's about progress. So, any questions? Adam.
So I'm not a big breakfast person,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been trying to get more in the morning, like having a protein shake. If I do go to like a morning meeting or something, I usually do have coffee black, and the reason I do that is just to get the caffeine in, just something a little pick me up. You're saying that black coffee, though, has a negative effect on the sugar levels, even if there's no sugar or anything in the coffee.
Yes, because coffee itself is stimulating your adrenal glands. So it's spiking your cortisol, which when the cortisol comes, the stress hormone, right? Cortisol basically alerts the body like, okay, we need more blood sugar because we're about to fight or flight. We need to power up those muscles. We need to power up the lungs. So what's happening is your body is releasing glucose into the bloodstream. And then again, if you're not fighting or flighting and you're just freezing, now you have a abundance of glucose in your bloodstream. So that's why adding something into the coffee, like the collagen or the fat, is gonna slow down that spike, right? Because the food can only move as fast as the slowest train car.
So not to like sound funny, but if
Yeah.
I'm sitting there when I would normally get a black cup of coffee, I'm not carrying around a scooper of collagen with me. I know that you do.
I do, he's not wrong.
Yeah, I know Allison very well. What would you recommend for me to be able to enjoy that cup of coffee? Because I'm not a sugar guy, I'm not usually a cream guy. Would I literally put a thing of butter into the coffee and scoop and stir it around? Like, what
Yeah,
would- okay.
it tastes really good. It brings like a
I've
creaminess to
had
it.
like blended coffee before with the butter and so forth in it, but
Even
it's
if
not
you
really-
can like, I don't know, have like a little handful of walnuts, something with fat in it is gonna
something
slow
that
down.
was
So like something small, it doesn't have to be a huge elaborate meal, but just like anything you can get in there that has a little bit of fattiness to it that will slow down that spike that the caffeine's craving.
Not
You-
cookies.
Not cookies. Not cookies.
You crushed this, Allison. This was
Thank you.
phenomenal.
Thank you.
Rich
Yeah,
did a
very,
great job
very
too.
informative.
Thank you.